Let's see.
Hello, folks.
I'm going full Adam Wathan and eating my microphone.
Good man.
No, do not record audio from my headphones. That would be a terrible idea. That would, in fact, be a god-awful idea. Oh. Welcome back to the Laravel News Podcast. This is episode 76, and I'm here with my ever-punctual co-host, Jake Bennett. I'm just kidding.
How's it going, everybody? Let me see here. I haven't got to get my recording set up.
I was just kidding.
All right. Okay. Laravel News. There we go. Okay. QuickTime Player. And that looks good. Yep, that looks good.
Bong, bong. Actually, before we go live, we should figure out that if our audio levels are the same.
Okay. How do we do that?
Have you got the public link for the video?
I do. It's I put it on the tweeters.
Okay. Oh, here we go.
Telegram.
Let's go.
It's me, Mario.
It's a Mario.
There you go.
Beauty.
Hey, late night podcast.
How do you even set up a live broadcast?
Literally every time, all I do is I just Google live Google Hangout.
Okay.
And then I click the link in there.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Unmute.
Sugar cookies. Vince. Sugar cookies. I gotta get this out of here too. There's a light over there. Maybe I should shut it off.
All right. Vince. Late night podcast, Vince Mitchell. Well, it's better. You should get one of those fancy ring lights that Jake Bennett. No, not Jake Bennett. Adam Wathan.
Does he have a ring light?
I think Wes Boss has one, and I think maybe Adam got one as well. Matt was looking for one.
If your face is going to be on camera.
Work party ring light. Okay, I have to mute this now. Jeez Louise. I had to mute the live broadcast because I could just.
Some people don't need it. Some people don't need a ring light. Am I right?
I mean,
Just kidding. Dude, it's 10:50. I'm looking rough. All right. Ready to get started?
Ooh, I've got all sorts of lights. I can that one. Ooh, I got that one. That one. I've got a yellow one that doesn't really do anything. This one.
We're ready to roll on this bad boy.
It's probably
that's a good one. That's a good one. Let's do that.
All right. I don't think I need any light.
Are we ready?
Justin Jackson. Oh,
Justin, jump on. Justin.
Gosh, now I feel all giddy and nervous.
Welcome to the show, my friend.
He's
all the live streams he does, he has to tune into everybody else's once in a while.
That's right.
I think, Michael, you're the lady. You're the lady in that little emoji thing there.
Oh, dancing. I'm the one on the right, definitely.
Okay, let's do this thing, shall we?
All right. How does Daniel Coleman do it? And the 1, and the 2, and the 3, and the.
All right, I'm recording. You'll just think that one up later. I think I clicked a half second too late. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Laravel News Podcast. This is episode 76, and I believe our second live stream, our first live stream or second live stream. I can't remember.
Second live stream for the Laravel News Podcast, yeah.
Okay. We're trying this thing out. See how it works. Yeah, Mr. Justin Jackson just joined us in the chat room along with Vince Mitchell. Thanks, guys, for joining us and saying hi. This is going to be our last episode before the new year. So this is our Christmas, New Year, Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Festivus episode. So thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully this finds you well and probably traveling on the road to wherever your destination might be for the holidays. Myself and my family are going to be in Ohio. Really looking forward to that. That should be a lot of fun. We rented a big log cabin this year for all the cousins and everybody to be in, and I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping nobody gets sick.
Mm.
Uh, the last time we were all together like this, we all got sick. Literally everybody got
Uh,
sick. It was horrible.
no, you
It
don't
was
want that. Not at Christmas, especially.
No, no, it was rough. It was really bad. So anyway, fingers crossed that doesn't
Yeah,
happen.
I'm rooting for you.
How about you? What are you doing for Christmas this year?
We are staying home this year. So last year we went up to my sister, but this year we are staying at home. We alternate between going up there and spending time here with my family here and Ree's family. So yeah, this year we're doing Christmas Eve lunch with my family, like my mum and my dad and my brother and his girlfriend, and then Christmas Eve we're doing dinner with like my extended family, and then Christmas Day lunch is with Ree's family. So lots of getting around and seeing everyone and showing off Eli for his first Christmas. We went and saw Santa today.
Oh, that's
So
awesome. How did that go?
yeah, really well. We were like, you know, there's always a screaming child in these photos, and we figured that that was going to be the case. Although my dad
That's like the price of admission. You know,
Santa,
you gotta
yeah,
have
my dad kind of looks like Santa, so Eli's been getting practice for the
nice.
last
That's
month. So
hilarious.
yeah, so yeah, it went well. He looked a bit, perplexed by everything. There's bright lights and lots of people, and he was just like out of it. And then as soon as he sat down and we started squeaking the little toy to get his attention, he turned on the charm as he
Nice.
do. So yeah, the photos that we got look really good. I'm sure Ree will share them on Twitter at some point.
Yeah, he's an adorable kid. Can't that kid can't take a bad photo. Pretty sure.
I don't
Pretty
think
sure.
so.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you know what? We do actually have a shorter episode this week. Looks like we have about one, two, three, four, five, six things, and one of which we won't really cover because it's pretty code heavy and it's kind of a series that's been going on the site for a while here. So we have not a ton to talk about. That's okay though. We will try and make it worth your time to listen. Take a listen here. So, why don't we jump right in there? So, tracking view errors with Honey Badger in Laravel. So, this was written by our very good friend and Cash Money cohort, Mr. TJ Miller. So TJ's been working with Honey Badger for a while. They actually sponsored the show a few weeks ago, a few episodes ago.
Mhm.
Michael, for those who maybe didn't get a chance to listen to that one, could you just do a quick refresh of our memories? You did such a good job reading the sponsor. You know, I figured you could grace us with your Aussie awesome uh, linguistics once again.
I'll give it a go. This seems to work so much better when I'm on the spot. So Honey Badger, we've had things like Sentry and Bugsnag and Rollbar in our community for quite some time. They're quite prominent in PHP. Honey Badger's been around as long, if not longer, than all of those other providers or bug tracking software. But they've been really popular in the Ruby world. So they've decided to reach out into PHP, and they've spent a bit of time, as you said, with TJ putting together some stuff specific for Laravel in order to make tracking bugs, even easier or really easy in Sentry. So, well, that's not true. Really easy in Laravel, but it's as easy as everything else, right? So, one of the main benefits of Honey Badger is that it doesn't just track your bugs, but it does a whole bunch of other reporting as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah. It kind of like centralizes a lot of those things for you, right? So it's not only error tracking, it's also you have, what do they call them? Like heartbeats, right?
Yep.
So there was another word for that. It's not just heartbeats. What do they call it? What do they call it? Like
Uptime monitoring. So they do uptime monitoring and check-in monitoring as
there you
well.
go. Thank you.
Sure.
Check and monitoring. Yeah.
It'll also, ping your external services so you know when those things are up and running. So, you might use 3 or 4 different services to accomplish all of this previously. And at face value, you look at the cost of something like Honey Badger and you go, "Oh, it's a bit expensive." But when you factor in the fact that you're paying for Sentry or Rollbar already, and then you're paying for something to do all of your uptime monitoring, and you're paying for something else to do your check-in monitoring like Deadman Snitch, for example. All of these costs kind of add up, and you end up paying for the same amount as you would for Honey Badger. But with Honey Badger, obviously, you're looking in one location for all of that stuff rather than having to log into, say, Sentry and then having to log into Deadman Snitch and then logging into something like Odeer for all of your exception monitor, for all of your uptime monitoring and that kind of stuff. So it's nice in that regard that you've only got one place to look.
Yeah, and they've also got a free 15-day trial. So Honey Badger, you're getting pretty much free sponsorship out of this thing, mostly because we love TJ and because your service is pretty dang cool. But yeah, TJ did a great job of breaking this down. So what he was doing here is basically walking through the process of setting up Badger, track errors that you have in Vue, which is I literally scanned the article in about 5 minutes here, and it seems like you could get this set up quite quickly. Integrates also with Laravel Mix. He walks through that portion of it, and then also sets up release tracking. So I don't know if you've ever done release tracking. It's so, and it doesn't always work like specifically in the way that he's got it set up here. You would have to be in a Git repo in order to be able to use it in the way that he's suggested, right? Do all your deployments happen like do the repos that you're deploying, do they come in as a Git? Like, are they a Git repo on the server that you're deploying to or not?
Typically, some of our stuff is, some isn't. What we do in instances where we're deploying like the artifacts, just the application itself, and not doing a Git based, Git pull to have all of that stuff in our deployment, is that we'll actually do a rather than the config caching the hash. What we'll
Yeah,
do is, as part of our deploy process, we will get that same hash and we'll put it into a version file in our
nice.
base directory, and then we read that rather than shelling out to Git.
Yep, which makes perfect sense as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can do that as part of your deployment pipeline and just drop a little dot file in there or whatever, and this could pick up on that as well.
Mhm.
But it's a really great, succinct little article here for handling error tracking in Vue with Honey Badger. So thanks, TJ, for writing that up. Really appreciate it. Great job.
Hey, you mentioned Mix there. You
Yeah.
threw it into Mix, as it were, and
Mhm.
there isn't an article about this just yet, but Jeffrey Way released very quickly in the last 2 weeks version 3 and version 4 of Laravel Mix. So
Okay.
version 4 of Laravel Mix is now the default if you were to spin up a new Laravel application, and we'll just hit the high points on this, but I'm sure there'll be an article from everyone's favorite human being, Paul Redmond, in the
Of
in the
course.
next little while. But we've got faster compile times using, I think, a newer version of Webpack. So we're using Webpack 4 now. So this gives us faster compilation, faster npm installs. We're using a newer version of Vue Loader and a newer version of Babel. It also does automatic vendor extraction, CSS minification using CSS Nano. Post CSS plugins are much more easily passed into things like Sass and Less and Stylus. The JavaScript optimization and minification is now using Tersa instead of Uglify. And instead of using Node Sass, we're now using Dart Sass. And the only comment I had to Jeffrey on that was, will this make that error that always comes up every time I
All right.
upgrade
I'm
M
going to
on?
recompile node test.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff there. A lot of it is more around optimization than any groundbreaking new features. But as I said, that's now part of the default Laravel application when you spin up a new app. And if you're wanting to upgrade, there's instructions in the Laravel Mix release notes, which we will include in the show notes as well.
I've always had that, or not always, but recently had that same problem with the Node SAS stuff where I have to recompile it. It seems
Yeah.
like all the time. So yeah, I found that interesting as well. I think I saw that as
Yeah.
your comment
So,
on Twitter.
yeah. So if you were to upgrade Node on your machine, you will have to recompile Node SAS in each project that's using Node SAS. So it's not installed globally. So and I'm like, I'm sure I fixed this as I was switching between 2 or 3 different applications after I
Yeah,
had run the
right.
update. So yeah, hopefully using Dart SAS will improve this. It means you don't have to recompile that. So I will definitely be checking out Webpack or Laravel Mix version 4 in the coming weeks.
Very nice. We also have this forg.js. And I think Paul, yeah, I think Paul talked about this. Yep, it is. And what it is it's a lightweight JavaScript object validator. Um, so it's interesting because this is not tied specifically to Vue. A lot of the things that I've used recently for front end sort of validation um, are tied specifically to Vue, and this is not. So it's just a JavaScript object validator. So literally, you take any JavaScript object, and then you can validate it using forg.js. So it's pretty cool for that reason. But then Paul basically walks through how you would set it up to handle validation in a way that would work with your Vue sort of forms and those sorts of things. So it looks like it's a pretty straightforward library. The API is very friendly, but it also seems like it's very, very extensible because it's not specifically tailored to be for forms. You really gain a lot of flexibility. So some of the things that you have when you are dealing with different validation libraries is a lot of times they have conventions around how you should display errors and those sorts of things. And this doesn't care at all. It basically just lets you write the rules, check for errors, and then you can display the errors however you'd like to. You can have multiple rules set up for each one, for each field that is in your object, or for each key in your object. You can define new rules really easily. And it looks like it's a really great library. So Paul talks about he's using it as a in the front end for form validation on an SPA that he's building, and he's really, really liked it. I wanted to talk a little bit about any other front end validators that you may have used. Michael, have you ever had this problem, or do you typically defer to the back end validation stuff?
Yeah, I don't do any of the validation on the front end as such. The only thing that I really do is the implied validation you get from Chrome and Firefox when you say that a field is required or that or type URL of email or whatever. But typically, what I'll do and what I've used in the past is the Sparsy package, which was born out of some videos that Jeffrey did over on Laracast,
Mhm. Yep.
which like a view validate or something like that, and it essentially handles the format of the validation errors that come back from your backend. So you can post to an endpoint, do a normal request validate in your application, and it will send back the errors, and it will handle filling in all of the errors inside of your form. So you get like that instant feedback rather than sending the request to the server and then having to redirect back. So it's just a nice little you know, point between, it mixes the worlds between the front end validation and the back end validation. And doing it that way, I think is really nice because it means you don't have to duplicate your validation logic on both the front and back end as you would if you're using something like this in a Laravel project, for example.
Totally. Yeah, no, I do agree. Um, yeah, I we and that works. We're using that in production in my place of business where we're using the Spassy library, and it works well. And like you said, it does provide you a single location to put your validation. The spots where I struggle with it are when you have either a multi-page form where you need to validate before leaving a page.
Mhm.
I couldn't figure out how to do like partial form validation where I say like, hey, I'm going to submit all of these through at the end, but I'm really only interested in checking these five
Yeah.
before I submit to the next page, right? And I'm sure there is ways to do it. I'm sure there is. Um, but that was the first challenge that I faced where I was like, yeah, I'm not sure if this backend validation is going to work for that. I think that was the initial challenge that really kind of pulled me away from keeping the validation all in the back end, and
Mm.
instead I just kind of said, you know what, I'm going to put some validation in the front end, some lightweight validation here, and then essentially my validation that happens on my server is really only for people who are trying to be nefarious, right?
Yeah.
So I know for a fact that if somebody's passing in something that doesn't match, it's likely because they're either modifying the request or something like that. So it's there for safety, but I don't have to depend on it so much, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense, yeah. Like I don't. So the nice thing is like if they get to my controller and it's a bad like whatever, like if it's a
Mhm.
bad request, like if it's malformed or if there's invalid keys or requested things that are required, they're not there, I don't really have to worry about sending back a pretty message. I just kind of blow up and say, "Hey, you did something wrong," because I know that like the people who are doing that are not like doing it.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, uh, they're doing it intentionally. They're trying to screw with me. Um, so having said that, it's allowed me to be able to make a really good user experience on the front end. I feel like because I can also validate as they're going through fields and things like that, right? So um, I can so if they, for instance, let's say they go to submit to the next page and it shows me like 4 errors or something, or maybe it's just 2 errors. As soon as they correct that error and tab out of it, the error goes away, right? It validates it in line right there. There's no error now, and so they can see they're correcting it as they go. Um, there's a like a used front endation, and it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. I feel like it's so much nicer now. There's some really really good libraries out there. Viewlidate is the one that I use quite a bit, but I know there's another one. Vvalidate I think is another one. So anyway,
Yeah, nice.
yeah,
We'll
we'll
definitely put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yep, yep. There we go. Okay, moving on. We have another package here called ESLint. I'm sorry, Vue ESLint. It's a plugin, and it allows you to lint your Vue code. Michael, have you looked at this one yet?
No, I mean, we're pretty excited about using Style CI to do all of our backend stuff, but have
Absolutely.
we don't really have any, concrete set of styles for our JavaScript. Mostly because we don't really have a lot of JavaScript that is in a state that would ever pass any linting tools as it is now.
Yeah, it's so basically it is exactly what it says, right? It's a linting tool. So just like most other linting tools, you're going to have to set it up to be exactly what you would want it to be. It does ship with default configurations, though, that I think sort of conforms to what the official documentation would recommend.
Mhm.
That's great. So that works, out of the box, giving you some really good recommendations. So all you have to do is install it using npm or yarn, or the preferred Vue CLI tool if you are in fact using that in your project.
Mm.
If you are using it with the Vue CLI tool, it'll automatically add the link to your package.json scripts configuration. And then there's a couple other options here for how you would add it in if you aren't using the Vue CLI tool. So then all you'd have to do is run yarn lint, and you'll start seeing the linting output in your console. So that's pretty interesting. What is that one that I feel like there's one that David Hemphill uses? It's like Beautify or something like that. That kind of like runs as you're coding. Have you know what I'm talking about or no?
Yeah, vaguely. I vaguely recall what you're talking
It's
about.
basically like what it is, and I had something like this with a Tailwind something that I pulled down from Adam, where I would go to save a file and it would lint it automatically, like immediately. As soon as I saved it, it would lint it, and it would tell me like, "Hey, you don't need a comma here," or "There's no semicolon needed," or "You need to put a space between the function name and the brackets," or what, or in the parentheses. Um,
Yeah,
this
it's
Beautify one, I feel like it automatically formatted it.
yeah, it's JS pretty or prettier or something,
Oh,
prettified.
prettier. I think that's prettier. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which you
They're
can
pretty
use
cool.
for, there's a PHP version for it now. It is a very opinionated code formatting tool, and I because it's opinionated, there's not really much configuration you can do, and for PHP, I have found that it doesn't quite jive with me and the way that I expect my code to look, so but yeah, prettier is certainly what we're after. So it's just at prettier.io, prettier.io, but we will include that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that looks pretty cool as well. So check that out. Check it out. Okay, what do we got next, Mr. Dorinda?
Uh, Before we move on to our releases, I suppose we can talk about one more package here, and that is the Laravel Dusk dashboard package, which is a beautiful dashboard for your Laravel Dusk tests written by Marcel Possiot. Marcel describes this package as follows. Laravel Dusk Dashboard is a Laravel package that gives you a beautiful dashboard for your Dusk test suites. It completely visualizes the individual steps that are involved when your Dusk tests are running, as well as DOM snapshots for each individual step, which makes it super useful when you try to debug your browser test and to figure out what they are doing in the background. You can also make use of your browser's debug tools to inspect DOM snapshots. So he's got a detailed write up on
Cool.
how this been working on it for quite some time. I think he's very recently tagged version 1.0 of it. Obviously, he's been busy working on other things, and this is kind of cool because it allows you to see in the web browser as on this little dashboard what's going on as your dust tests are running. You know, sometimes you might be using the headless Chrome, so you don't see what's happening. Sometimes, you know, it happens that quickly that you don't see it anyway. So, you know, it's kind of handy to have that tool and seeing snapshots of each step and what's happening in your browser without having to, you know, look at it and stop those tests from running as you go is really kind of handy.
That is incredible. I think one of the things that's like a big added on like plus with this is that you can debug the different like the different pages. You can see them live like over like as you're clicking through the tests, but you can also use your Chrome inspector tools, the ones that you're super familiar with, to highlight everything and look at it, the state of it, what it was when that test ran, which is ridiculous. That is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It's pretty
Um,
powerful.
yeah. So this is incredible. So he's got an extended
So
write up that's referenced in the Laravel news post that Paul talks about. But this is an incredible tool. The only thing that I'm missing right now for these dusk tests, I know there used to be a Chrome plugin where you could kind of click through your application and it would like pretty much write the dusk tests for you. Is that like defunct or like deprecated or doesn't work anymore? Or
I think it's a separate thing. I
I
know
know it
that
is, but I'm
pretty
just
sure
not sure if it
Muscle
still
wrote it
works.
as well, but I think that's for building up your PHP unit test more so than the dust test. And I think he was working on the dust test side of things, but I don't know that he's finished. So
Okay.
maybe he'll be able to fill us in on that after this episode comes out.
Yeah. I know that we had also talked about having Marcel and Frake on last show, and they both responded, yes, we'd love to do that. So we'll have to do that sometime in the new year. We've already talked with them,
Yeah.
and we're definitely going to have them on. Talk about the one that we talked about last time, which was the WebSockets, the Laravel WebSockets
Mm.
package that they released. And then we'll have to make sure we talk to Marcel about this one as well, the Laravel Dusk dashboard package. So you can find
Yeah.
information on both of those in the show notes. Check that out and go buy one of Marcel's courses. I
Yeah.
think the Botman stuff would be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Okay, so the next thing we have on the docket here, we only have this one release, I think, right?
Two.
Actually, you know what's that? What am I missing? Five
There's
seven sixteen, 5.7.17.
16 and 17, yeah.
Okay. You know what? The other thing that's not on here is Nova released a new version as well.
Yeah. We can talk about that.
Yeah, we can. Okay, sorry, let me get back to it. Okay, so we've got two releases. All right, why don't we start with 5.7.16 then?
Sure. Laravel 5.7.16 is available with new translation messages for the 403 and 503 blade templates. And we also enable the migrator to accept not only migration directory paths, but also file paths. Hey, that's handy for me.
Yes, that is. I was actually uh,
Previously in the 403 and 503 views, the strings were hard coded to obviously the English versions. So now these are now translatable strings. So if you're using Laravel for your non-English website, then you can use the translatable strings in those error views rather than having to completely override the view in your own application. And as I said, the other addition is that the migrator is now able to handle both file paths and directories for PHP migration files. So only directories were allowed previously, um, but basically it will now look for any PHP files inside of a directory. But there's quite a few bug fixes in this project, in this release rather, including a revert to a breaking change for the test response decode response JSON method. So obviously the link to the article with all of the changes will be in the show notes.
awesome. We also have 5717. It is available with the new query builder methods that they've placed in, a new message for detecting lost connections in MariaDB, and improvements to adding foreign keys in Postgre. Is that how you say it, Postgre?
Postgres.
Do people
You
say
have that.
Postgres? I feel like I've heard people say Postgre.
Okay.
Maybe
Well.
maybe
Well.
those maybe like some French people or something.
Oh
You
yes,
know, I actually what did you say? I missed that.
that was probably the worst French accent you will ever hear, and it's not going to be repeated.
So, like, I learned that I looked up I looked up the word, like, the river that runs through Paris,
Right.
and it said American pronunciation, Seine, French pronunciation, Seine. So
Yeah.
it's like there's more than one proper way to say it? I don't know.
Well,
Maybe
no,
there's
there's a proper way to say it, and then there's the way that the Americans butcher it.
Dude, I don't think I ever told you this. We went over to France, for, like, 2 weeks with a group of high school students, and they were fulfilling the role of, the typical obnoxious American, but they
Mm.
were doing it, like, to their best. So they were, like, slaughtering. They were, like, walking around like, "Bonjour." It was great. It was fun times. And so they were being really, obnoxious and loud and just trying to get people to hate them, which I think they succeeded. And,
I think it's pretty easy.
it was
Most of the
uncomfortable.
European countries are a little bit funny about the Americans. You are American big dogs.
Oh my. Okay. So let's talk about 5717 here. Okay, so we have a new method in the query builder for the insert into select statement without loading data into memory. I'm going to have to read through this here. The insert using method allows you to copy all or some columns from one database to another using the following syntax. This is pretty amazing. I've
Yeah.
needed this actually. So select, an insert into select. So where you can is basically say, grab these columns from this database, just take them all and just chuck them into this other
Mhm.
database table. And so we've basically done this with raw. I've done this with raw stuff before. Uh,
Yeah, I usually pop open SQL Pro and do it right in there.
exactly, yeah. But now you have the ability to do it straight from the query builder.
Yep.
So insert using, you'll have to take a look into that. I'm not going to read the.
It'd be
I would,
handy if you're building a script where you're archiving data. Like if you had a scheduled task where you wanted to move some data out of your, active table into some kind of archive table, that would probably be one place where you might use it.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. So there's also another query builder method called having between. So if you have the having kind of comes after I think like having is like the last thing that you can put on. So it's like
If you've
select
got a
star.
group,
Say that one more time.
if you've got a group by statement, typically.
Sure. So it's like select star from table where this group, whatever, having, right? And so
Mhm.
now you have this having between method, which allows you to specify a column and then two values that it should fall between. In this case, in the case that they're showing here, it's two dates, right? So having last login date between these two dates. So that's pretty handy, actually. That's pretty useful. Um,
Yeah.
yep. Very nice, very nice. We talked about the detecting lost connection from MariaDB. It used to say, I think, packets out of order, um,
Mhm. Which
something
doesn't
like.
mean much of anything if you're not expecting it or if you're not, and I think typically now most people that are using not Laravel in general, but frameworks more broadly, is that you won't necessarily have an understanding of the underlying databases because a lot of us are using, in Laravel, we're using Eloquent and Active Record. In Symphony, you're probably more likely to be using Doctrine and the data mapper pattern. So if you get one of these errors from MySQL, then you're less likely to understand what that is. So the fact that we've now got a more useful error message in our applications is helpful, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really wraps up 5717. I don't think there's a lot more on that one. Think that was it.
Mm.
So that is literally all the news we have for this week. So we have only
That's
been going for a half hour. We
You
have a
missed a
couple
really big
people.
piece of news.
What's that now?
You missed a really big piece of news.
Oh, hold on. Oh, well,
Of
okay.
December, the PHP team released PHP version 7.3 for general availability, which marks
Oh,
the
yes, we did.
third feature update to PHP 7.
You know what? Actually, hold on. I got a couple other things I'm writing down here. Um, Nova update, Laracon US website launched.
Oh my god.
What else was there? I know there was something else. What else was there? I don't know. Um, we need to take a look at some of the community links, I suppose.
Mm,
And then if there's any questions in the chat room here, let's see here.
indeed.
Any one of you two on PHP 7.3 yet? No,
No.
no, not
Yeah,
yet.
so as I said, the third feature update to PHP 7 is now live. If you're using Laravel Forge, you can go in there and click a button and it will install and configure your server to use 7.3. Alternatively, you can just spin up a brand new server that's already set up with PHP 7.3 and migrate your sites. On that note, if Dries or Taylor or Mohammed are listening to this, I think that I would not be the only one in our community that would be excited to see a migrate site to new server feature in Laravel Forge.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
I mean, realistically, it's moving SSL, your security certificate. If you've got it set up, it's moving the database typically, and really just taking the Git repo, and any storage. All right, I'm making it sound
I was
easy.
gonna say it's yeah. No, even at that, like even if there was options, it's like everybody's setup is so variable. Like so I don't even use a database on most of the servers that I have because I just have like connected out to like RDS sort of situation. Um yeah, but the SSL stuff transferring over would be really sweet.
I didn't ask for that, and it won't make the final cut. Fine, you took me out of it. Anyway, while today marks the release, the marks the day of the stable release, you will have to wait a bit longer for a migration guide, which should be available shortly. It may already be out now. I haven't looked, to be honest. But if you haven't read much on PHP 7.3 yet, here are the highlight features coming, which we have written about on Laravel News previously. We will now have trailing commas in function calls.
Those are
JSON
nice.
There is a JSON throw on error flag for JSON encode and JSON decode. So where in previous versions of PHP you would run the JSON encode or decode function, and then you would have to check JSON last error to see if what the error was when those functions just return false. You can now have PHP throw an exception, which is handy. We've now got flexible here doc and now doc syntax. There is an is countable function and list reference assignment. If you would like to learn more about what that is, then check out the link to the article in the show notes.
Yeah, very cool. So Caleb Porzio actually put out a good tweet on this, like said like, hey, here are my favorite things about PHP 7.3, and it was insightful. I think the trailing comments and function calls is cool. Have you ever been bitten by that before, where like you start like you
Mm.
break onto a new line these parameters that you're throwing in
Yeah,
to a function call or something, and you accidentally put that comma on as like a habit for what you do like in an array, and it
one more
breaks.
confirmation. So it'd be
Yeah,
nice to have that now for any of those functions that are split over multiple lines. Obviously it's now consistent with array syntax where you can have that trailing comma. But the reason I like doing that, if I've got a multi-line array declaration and now in the function declaration, it means that your Git diffs will
yeah,
be that much cleaner because you're not changing the previous line to add a new option to it if you've
correct.
already got
Yeah.
a trailing comma there. So that's why I'm a big fan of the trailing comma in my arrays and will be now in my function calls once we get onto PHP 7.3 in the next little while here. We'll probably wait for a couple of point releases just to make sure everything gets tidied up and is working properly. I think Eric Van Johnson in the chat has said that there were some issues that people he knows that use 7.3 ran into with opcache. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll stay fast for the time being.
It's just like a new Mac release, right? Like I'm just gonna wait for a little bit before I push anything in production to 7.3. Hey,
Yeah.
you were talking real quick about Forge and being able to do a new 7.3 server. One other feature that a couple things. So they pushed a new update for Envoyer. The UI has been updated. It looks really, really nice.
Yep.
Another thing that they did recently is they made it so that if you have a server in Forge, and you're using Envoyer as well, whenever you go to set up a new site in Envoyer or just add a server to one of your Envoyer sites, you used to have to basically put in all the stuff, right? You used to have to say, here's the name of the server, here's the IP address of the server, here's what version of PHP it's running, here's what name I want you to connect as. What else? I'm trying to remember what else. Oh,
Basically,
you had to
so
copy the SSH key from Envoyer back over to Forge. And so now what you can do is you can link your Forge account with Envoyer. And then when you go to your servers on your Envoyer site, you just click import server from Forge and it will list out any servers that you have. You select the site, import, and you're all done. It's pretty awesome.
I'm doing it live. You keep talking, but I'm going to do this right now.
Yeah, it's incredible. It really saves a lot of time. And especially if you're doing basically what you said, like if you're provisioning a new server and moving a site over and all, you just need to do that quickly. It really makes the process very pain free. So
Yeah.
that's very cool. I will keep talking. So Laravel Nova 1.2.1 released on December 12th. There is a lot of new abilities and a lot of new fixes. I'm not going to go through all of them here. But there's a ton. There's a ton of stuff in here. A lot of good stuff. Also, this last week was my real first time using Nova in any sort of significant way. And I've got to say, people, if you have not had a chance to try it, it is freaking magic. It is magic. There
Nice.
is so much awesome stuff packed into this thing. And as I was reading through the documentation, I kept on just like, no way, it does. Oh my gosh, it does that. Or be like, find something where it would be like, I didn't even know I needed that, but now I need that. Like I didn't think about that. So one of those examples was number one, a huge benefit that takes a lot of time to do, and people don't recognize it. Probably, maybe they do. Is the error handling is super good in Nova. Super good. So like you forget to register something, and instead of blowing up in your face, it gives you a nice little notification in the bottom that says, "Hey, we couldn't find this, by the way." And
Mhm.
so the page kind of displays, and it might display a little bit wonky if you did something wrong, right? But it gives you this nice little clean error message that basically points you exactly to where the error is. Hey, go fix this little thing. It's like, oh, perfect. It's incredible. So it really helps with the learning curve on that. The other thing was, I had like a belongs to many relationship in one of my one of my resources, and I was like, man, there's like a lot of these things. Like if I want somebody to be able to change that, it's gonna be a huge pain because I have to search through all of those. And they're like, oh, by the way, if you're searchable too many relationship, just put arrow searchable on it, and it's now a searchable field. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like literally, there are so many things like that where it's just like, I have this problem, I need it solved, and it's like, oh, we already solved that.
That's
There's
very
there's
simple. Very simple.
oh my word, there's a million of them, and so it is an incredible tool. I promise you, it is not wasted money. There are so many people who are like, oh, I mean, are you kidding me? This is just another whatever, right? Another one of these. I mean, it is not. I promise you, it is not. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
We're actually looking to use it on a work project. So that'll be nice to get that into our work life as well.
Yeah.
Upgrading all of our servers to later versions of PHP and keeping up to date with later versions of Laravel has been wonderful. It's probably the greatest achievement I've had at work all year.
Yeah, I think that when you are able to provide something like this, because you probably can't give like root database access to even maybe more junior developers than yourself, just due to like compliance sort of reasons. Nova provides you the ability to quickly, extremely quickly, provide the ability for people to administer those databases even without root access to the MySQL instance, right? Um, that's the huge value for me, is like there are some things that I'm the only person who can do it because I'm the only one who has access to the database, and
Mhm.
there is no interface to modify those values, right? So by me using Nova, now I have the ability to pass that off and to delegate that responsibility to someone else, and I never have to look at it again, right?
Yeah.
They can just handle it. Um, so it's a huge win. It's a huge win. Go buy lots of licenses for wish yourself a Merry Christmas, buy a Nova license. and you won't be sorry you did. I promise.
Yeah.
That's my little commercial for Nova. Laracon US website launched. Let's talk about this real quickly, just because it was incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Absolute hat tip to Jack McDade, who, I mean, Taylor tweeted and said it's a little off brand, but he couldn't not do it. And I think Jack McDade has done a really, really, really good job on it.
Yeah.
Little Easter eggs that he's buried in there, just the design of everything, the way that it looks like an 80s set piece. It's incredible. So great work to him.
Everything. All of it looks like an 80s set piece, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
literally everything. There's so many
Like,
little
like,
references, and I mean, like even the photos that he has that are like, photos of the venue and stuff. He's like pixelated them and made them look all 80s ish. And like you said, there's a bunch of little Easter eggs hidden inside, so it's pretty cool.
yeah.
Pretty cool. One other thing I wanted to talk about on that, um, it was announced that all of the speakers this year will have 30 minutes to talk rather
Mm.
than an hour to talk. I, for one, am excited about this. What do you think?
I think it's pretty cool. I mean, I think Frake tweeted about it a little while ago. He wrote a blog post about it. Um, I considered doing that this year for Laracon AU to have shorter talks. I mean, my biggest concern was having shorter talks means more speakers, and I wasn't sure around finances for the conference because I'd never done it before. But you get rid of all the filler slides and the content that doesn't really matter. It's just there to make up time. You don't worry so much about 30-minute or 40-minute talks in a 50-minute slot. You don't worry about those awkward Q&As where the speakers is sort of like, please someone ask me a question. Those kinds of things all go away. And it really helps the speakers hone a talk and really put the important stuff into a 30-minute presentation. So, I mean, I'm all for it. I think it's really cool. Um, yeah, it's definitely something that I will be eagerly watching to see how that all pans out. I think we've still got the same number of speakers as what we had this year in 50 in the longer slots. So, that may mean longer breaks and more time between talks and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how the schedule turns out once that all comes together.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be really, really good. I'm excited about it. I think it's actually also less intimidating for people who want to give their first set of like
Yeah.
official big talk.
Yeah.
Um, it's less of a hurdle, right, to clear than like an hour long talk. An hour can feel like an eternity. And I do feel that, like, honestly, by the time you get to that hour mark, a lot of the stuff is like, okay, it was interesting in the first half hour, but
Yeah.
it's
That's the
just
thing.
not
Yeah.
interesting anymore. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be really good. And I'm crossing my fingers, hoping to get a spot. So I've already
Yeah.
submitted my abstracts, 2 of them. I'm probably going to come up with a couple more and just harass Taylor until he finally says yes. So,
Or he bans you from coming to the event, one or the other.
that could happen too. That can happen. Um, let's see. What else do we have? I think that was all I had. I was going to talk about some community links, but at this point we are at 44 minutes. So I think we are okay to wrap this one up.
I agree.
Awesome.
I'll allow it.
All right, let's do it. Everybody, thanks so much for listening to episode 76. It was great to have you listen and join us on the live show. Any of you who happen to do so, if you like this episode, please feel free to rate us up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars is always appreciated. Show notes to this episode will be at laravel-news.com/podcast/76. And of course, if you have any questions, any feedback, we always love to hear from you at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at Laravel News on Twitter. Merry Christmas to all. Happy Kwanzaa to all. Happy New Year. Happy Festivus. Happy all those wonderful holidays. We hope that this year was a wonderful one for you. Hope that you ring in the new year with plenty of people around you that you love and that love you, and have a great holiday season.
Absolutely. And to those of you who will be celebrating Festivus, I hope you have a wonderful time with the airing of grievances. I hope your impulses are shiny and firm. And to everybody else, however you choose to celebrate this holiday period with your friends, with your family, by yourself, traveling, whatever it is, we hope you have a great time, a refreshing time. And we will speak to you all in 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Dorinda, for being an amazing editor this year.
Hey,
Everyone, we owe him much thanks for all of his work.
no worries. Thank you for turning up and filling the other half of these shows for me.
Barely. Every week, barely. And late at that, most weeks.
I'll see you in 10 minutes, half an hour later. Jake, are you asleep?
Hey, I'm just starting to get into Rocket League now, and so oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Sometimes, like, when we're talking, like, it cuts out for me when you're talking, and I can't hear you. Sorry. Um,
Yeah, Rocket League. Go, go.
yeah, Rocket League. So I'm playing Rocket League after
Nice.
Taylor and Adam got destroyed. I was like, you know what? That looks really fun. I think I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, I tried to
So,
find the recording, but I couldn't find the recording of it, which,
mm,
for the two of them, from what I heard, is probably for the best.
yeah, yeah. It was pretty sad. I think it was like, I don't know. I want to say it was like 12-1. Taylor scored though. I
And
would
it's
have loved.
that's all that matters.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall. Oh my gosh, I'm sure. I'm gonna ask Abigail because she'll tell us honestly. Like, I guarantee he's like, whoa, I'm sure, right? He had to be.
The most excited person on the face of the planet at that point.
Yeah, he was losing his mind. Oh my word. Anyway, I digress. Thanks everyone. We'll see you in the new year.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us on the live stream.
Yeah.
It was good hanging out with you all. I'm stopping my recording, but I'm going to say thanks, everyone. And
Yeah.
Justin, who's probably not
Thanks for
here
being
anymore.
with us for 2018.
Yeah,
We'll try and do more of these in the future because they're fun. They certainly help us keep them focused and on a reasonable amount of time, because when you've got people watching you, you don't want them to hang around for an hour, and that keeps the finished products nice and tight as well.
yep. Less editing for Mr. Dorinda,
That's my favorite bit.
which is appreciated with the baby.
Yeah.
All right, dude. I'm gonna stop this broadcast here. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
No worries. Bye.